BraveWords Records, home for Paul Diano's Warhorse, the Chris Slade Timeline, Rhett Forrester and Rob Robbins, Prophets of Addiction, Jack Starr, Esker, Crimson Glory, and Lillian Axe, where music lives. BraveWords Records. Visit BraveWordsRecords.com.
Please, with palm trees included, I love this. Please welcome to BraveWords Streaming for Vengeance.
Screaming for vengeance.
Streaming for Vengeance, Armored Saint, Anthrax, legendary singer, Mr. John Bush. Thank you so much for joining me today.
What's up, brother man? How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. I will say I'm a little envious that not that we're in the dark depths of winter, but I am hailing from the Great White North. So to see a palm tree behind you, it's warming my heart. So thank you.
Well, what's funny, I don't think palm trees are actually native to Los Angeles. I think they were brought in here. So,
Yeah.
anyways, yeah, but it's like I said earlier when we were talking, it's been raining a lot here. So which is a good thing because we need the rain here in LA. So,
Now, this is actually a really I followed it. I bought Fistful of Metal as a kid, right? Loved it. Easily one of my favorite Anthrax records. So my point is, I followed the band to this day, obviously, but it's a really exciting moment when I heard that, oh my God, they're going to revisit the stuff that the band rarely plays. And no insult to Joey it's, you know what I mean? It's an era where they don't need to play it. I'd rather hear you sing it than Joey. They have too much to play, but it was so exciting. Like, oh my God, he's doing 3 shows with these fucking amazing records.
yeah, I'm excited. I've been talking about it for a long time, and I think people are getting tired of me talking about it. And so was I. So I finally said, it's funny because people have asked why now, and I was like, really, there's no like real rhyme or reason as far as timing goes. As a matter of fact, it's probably not the best of time, in the sense that Armored Saint just finished a record and we just mixed and mastered it. It's coming out in April. Um, I guess there's a little downtime in between finishing a record and then putting it out and then doing touring and stuff like that and press with that. So I guess hence that there is a little good time with that, but I could never pick a perfect proper time to do it. I think it was just more like there's some time in December. We could do 3 shows. I mean, a lot of this was instigated by my agent, Dan DeVito, who I worked with for years and years. He works for TKO, great agency. And he's the one that's kind of pushed this all along for years, actually. And so finally it was like, you know what? Let's do it. Let's do 3 shows. We'll kind of, do 3 different parts of the nation, different territories, and we'll just kind of dip our toe in the water and let's just do it and not think about it. And he had a couple promoters who were interested, and it was like the only question mark, believe it or not, was it's in December, and a lot of people stop touring in December because it's people are kind of they're caught up with the holidays and everyone's just thinking different things and not really thinking about spending money on entertainment. But that was a slight concern. But we talked to a couple promoters and they were like, no, we don't care. Let's do it. December 20th in New York. Let's go. So I was like, let's go. So we booked it.
Let's go just way back. Was there ever a point in your life where, you know what, you would tell people, I don't want to talk or think about Anthrax? Do you have that attitude? Some people say, like, no, I don't, that's in the past. I don't want to hear about that anymore. Were you ever part of that mindset? Is that?
No, because I'm really proud of the time I was in Anthrax, and I feel like we made really cool music. And other than the normal band uh, slight bitterness that every band has, I think it was mostly really good times. We had a bunch of great shows. I toured the world. I mean, for me, when I joined from Armored Saint to Anthrax, I took a step in popularity. It's just a fact. Anthrax is a much bigger band, so it was always easy for me to go out on the road and do things that maybe it was a struggle sometimes for those guys, because the fact of the matter is the 90s were a decline for not only this band but for a lot of bands. And so when they were like going, oh, we're only playing this place and we used to play that place, and I got to go to Europe for 6 weeks and I don't want to do that. And I was like, Europe for 6 weeks, awesome. And that place, I would be playing that place with Armored Saint. So I mean, to me, it was always kind of easy or easier, if you will, to do all that. And so it made it my feelings in association with my years in Anthrax was we made great records and we did a bunch of great touring. And I was exposed to a much larger world as far as heavy metal goes. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, it's not always, it wasn't always, wine and roses, but what band is? Armored Saint is it? I know no band is, and that's just the reality. So,
Well, it's like as a really passionate fan, you guys were releasing some great records, but the timing was, you know what I mean? But particularly, I know how big Stomp 442, I mean, or Sound of White Noise was, but I love Stomp 442, and I just kind of watched it kind of, it's right. It was poor timing, sadly enough.
well, it was a lot of things, and I mean, and I don't want to harp on that too much because then it sounds like I'm just kind of whining and complaining, and I don't really want to do that. The fact of the matter is there was a bunch of mistakes made. There was some situations that certainly worked against the band. I mean, we in a sense lost our record company, after Stomp. Um, we we really kind of did two records where other than We've Come For You All in Europe, where we were on Nuclear Blast, we really didn't even have a real label for those two records, Volume 8 and We've Come For You All. So,
Right.
um, and then we were dropped after, well, I don't know what the official word was, but we left Elektra after Stomp. And that was, I always tell the story of how when we went from Sound of White Noise to Stomp, we made the record Stomp, okay? And then we're getting ready to have the big meeting in the one of the corporate offices and have the discussion and play the music for the new people that were part of Elektra. And there was a lot of new people during between Sound of White Noise and Stomp. They had a head of the label that Bob Krasnow was there for years and years, who signed the Eagles and like broke tons of bands. He was fired, I think, and they brought in this new hotshot woman who was a um, up and coming person in the business. I won't mention her name. I have said it before, but in any case, she took over and really in a nutshell told us like as we were preparing to play the record for her that I wouldn't have done this deal with Anthrax. I wouldn't have signed you guys. And it wasn't like I wouldn't have signed you guys, but I'm glad you're on the label and hey, we're excited to hear your new record. There was no but. It was like I wouldn't have signed you guys. And we're like, okay, well, we just finished a record and we think it's killer. And, our last record was as successful as the previous one. So, I mean, how do we go forward from this? And that was kind of what happened with that record. Granted, it was still an Elektra, still did a ton of touring. Um, and it was still in the middle of the 90s. So yeah, sure, the timing was weird because obviously it was the middle of the grunge movement and everybody was looking at music differently then. But at the end of the day, we still believed in the record and we did what we had to do for that album and went out and did as much touring and press as we could. So
I'm gonna save some of this for a little bit later, but when you were putting all this together, did you ever think of a band? The first thing that popped into my head, I'm like, so what's the band name gonna be? Is it just gonna be John Bush? What kind of band name? And I couldn't think of a band name, so I'm like,
right. And believe me, I have a lot of apprehension with that myself. Like it's not a comfortable position for me. Um, I mean, I don't want to go like I'm overly humble. I don't want to say that because I do believe in myself and I'm confident in all the things I've done musically and as a singer. But, you know, John Bush, I don't know, it's like I don't know if I can buy it, but I mean, was like, what else am I going to call it? And I think there's there's an important moment for me for doing this because it's kind of the first time I really kind of stuck my neck out and go, okay, I'm not like relying on Joey Vera and I'm not relying on Scott and Charlie. It's like I'm doing this myself and I need to do it myself. And it's an important moment for me. So it's funny, I designed this backdrop and I designed these t-shirts and a lot of it has this kind of under kind of stated thing associated with my fears and trying to overcome them. And so like I designed it and kind of in conjunction with that. And so if people see the t-shirts, they're gonna be like, what is this? And as don't worry, it means something to me, but and they look cool. And I think it's gonna be really I'm really proud of some of the art that I created. But yeah, I mean, it's my time to do it. Obviously we did all that music together and they wrote all those songs. Charlie, Scott, I co-wrote stuff. Frankie, it's their music, it's their songs. It just so happens it's my voice. So, and if they don't play them, and they really don't. The fact of the matter is they don't. They played only about that's the only song they've ever played since I've left the band. Um, I don't want those songs to just be put into the uh, limbo state and never to be acknowledged. I mean, I'm proud of them. I want to play them and play them live, and they're going to be killer. And they always sound a killer. And I feel like I'm just bringing that to the attention of the world again. So I think they're cool with it. I feel they're cool with it.
But you guys, like, happy can't be the word. I don't think there's a word. Demel, Orlando, Bittner, and Vera. Like you guys in a room, like, you know what I mean? You're surrounded by people that you've known forever, and you all like. I'm like, who was actually the most excited? I'm like, oh my God, we get to play your era of Anthrax. Yeah.
I don't know. I guess that's a question for some of those guys. I mean, I think the idea of using the C7 guys because they're such awesome musicians was very logical and made sense. And this is on the heels of we just made this Category 7 record that came out like a year ago. And I'm really proud of that. I think it's a killer album and it's just, there's some ferocious music on it and awesome songwriting. So, um, you know, I've been saying if I was starting a band from scratch, I wouldn't really have to look too far because those guys are so talented. And, there's a lot of connections. I mean, Demel's been around for years and played with various bands and super talented guy. And Bittner actually filled in for Charlie on a few shows here and there. Mike Orlando is kind of like this understated, kind of underrated guitar player. Um, so I mean, they're really talented. I'm bummed about Jack because he's a great guy, super awesome bass player, and when we were putting this together, he had a conflict, and so I had to say, well, I got to get somebody because I can't like wait to see if you're available. And then so there was put into motion with Joey, of course, because there's nobody else I'd rather be on stage with as another bass player than Joey. And it just so happens that, what Jack was doing, it fell through and I was really bummed, but I was like, what am I going to do? Like Joey's already working on this stuff and learning it. So it's just the way it is. So.
Was it easy to put together? Is it easy putting together a set list for these three shows?
I bombarded the guys with a lot of tunes. They were like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's a lot of songs." I go, "Wow, I haven't played in a long time, so I don't want to come out and just play the obvious songs." I think it's important to get dig deeper into the records a little bit. Um, I think I was fairly reasonable about what songs and. Some of them were just my personal favorites. Some were obvious choices, like I said. I listened to some fans about what things they would like to hear, what songs they would like to hear. I mean, I have to be reasonable. I was doing an interview with a guy last week, and he's going, "How about this song?" And I was like, "That's great," and I love that song. The only thing is, if I play that song and like 10 people out of of all the people in the venue are excited, that may not be the right decision. So um, within reason, I'm going into deep tracks, but I think I don't know. I've made a calculated decision. I think these are good ones to play, even though they're not the most popular ones. So, but I mean, hey, I don't know. It could change. Like I'm gonna probably I've given the guys a bunch of tunes and I'm kind of holding back several more that I'm waiting until they're kind of real comfortable with these. And then I'm going to be like, okay, here's four more that I want you to learn. And they're probably going to be like, what, dude? But I think it's the right thing to do.
Um, a lot of this stuff is like you've got a couple of years on me. I'll be 59 next year. I'm like some of this
62, baby.
like, but my point is like some of the stuff is like 30, like the kids you're playing like weren't even born. Some of the
No,
bands, right? And some
yeah,
of mine I haven't even heard of some of these records either.
yeah, I agree. Well, I mean, and that's the funny thing about it is the reality is I am doing old material. So when people are like, "Well, what does this mean?" and like, "What does this mean for Armored Saint?" It's like, well, it doesn't mean anything. We made it. We just finished an Armored Saint record of brand new material that I think is off the charts. So these are old songs. Sound of White Noise is over 30 years old, and We've Come for You All, the most recent one, is over 20 years old. That came out in 2003. So this is not new music. It's certainly a step in nostalgia, and which is fine. I dig it. A lot of people. I mean, hell, at this point, the zeros are feeling nostalgic for people. So hence the '90s and '80s are even older nostalgic, and I think people like they're into nostalgia and they feel they want to go back. I mean, I don't. I think once music's made, no matter how much time passes, people always drift back and go, "What happened then?" Even the '60s. I mean, I listen to like Little Steven's Garage on Sirius satellite, and they play really cool stuff from the '50s. And I was like, man, that's a great tune. I didn't even know that song, and it's rocks. So I don't think there's a time limit on anything. But I think there's a reality that this is old material. How will it sound live here 20 to 30 years later? I think it's going to sound really fresh.
Now, BraveWords as a magazine started in '94, so
That's awesome.
this is really around the era where I don't know where you came out, obviously, but I'll never forget the Warner up in Canada, so distributed Atlantic and
Right,
Rhino and all this, right,
right,
right.
right, right.
So the label manager brought me in, and he pressed play, and I've got a cassette single of this song,
Awesome.
and he pressed play on Only, and we said, Tim, if this is like the new Anthrax with this new singer. And like, I don't even know how to describe as a metalhead that grew up with Maiden and Priest, know what I mean, and all like in all the
Sure.
big four. And I'm listening to Only. I'm like, wow, this doesn't number one, it doesn't really partly sounds like Anthrax. It doesn't sound like Anthrax. And where the fuck is this voice? We know the voice, but wow, what a really powerful metal moment I've in my history when I first heard Only.
Yeah, I mean, I felt the same way when I heard the demo and they sent it to me, and I was like, wow, it just sounded very forward to me. That's the best way to describe it. It sounded like it was a something that sounded like it was coming from the future musically and in the world of metal. So, I think that riff it was just it was something that you could tell music for this band was going to be taken a step forward into the future, and it made sense, I guess, if you're going to make a vocal change, this was the time, because it may be a time to embellish this kind of forward future sounding heavy metal from Anthrax. So at the same time, Scott's guitar playing is undeniable, and you can never really kind of second guess the way it sounds because he has his own very unique, distinct style of playing, and it's kind of like I said, it's undeniable when you hear it. But the riffs and the chord structure and changes was definitely something different, and it was exciting to write that song, and we wrote it really quick. It was probably within like an hour, I think, once we got in the studio and actually worked on the verses and the B section and the chorus, and it sounded like a huge anthem right away. So, and then we embellished it with songs like Black Lodge, which is very different for Anthrax as well. And they never really had written a slow song. They wrote a couple goofy slow songs where they were kind of mocking slow songs, but they didn't really take it seriously. And we had uh, uh, Angelo Badalamenti, the guy who did all the music for Twin Peaks, bring in a bunch of strings and do something, just took it to a whole nother level with the sound and with the approach to the song. So that was different, and that was very forward thinking. So then we had, Room for One More, which is just a great heavy rock tune, and Hyper Glow, which kind of, had its own kind of unique style and sound to it with Anthrax. So it just, there was something about Sound of White Noise that really kind of just felt like, wow, this is a record that's, sounding very forward. That's the best way to describe it, at least for me.
Now, as an outsider fan looking in, it seemed that it was more than just the singer that had to change with Anthrax, right?
Well, you know, all I know is, they parted ways with Joey, and I know it was a tough time, and I know that's something that to this day Joey's not very pleased with, and I get it, man. Of course, who would want to, basically be, let go from a band, especially a band who was doing very well. And don't forget, here's the weird kind of thing that kind of almost doesn't make sense is that when Anthrax did make that change, it was also right around the same time that Motley made that change. And and both bands had just signed to Elektra and big record contracts.
Yeah.
So I mean, Elektra must have been like, wait, you're doing what? You're firing your singer. We just gave you this big record deal, and now you're firing your singer. And what are you doing? You know, so I'm sure the label is just like scratching their head and probably not very happy about these two big rock bands. They just renewed their deal with Motley and signed Anthrax. But for me, it was like, okay, well, I can't think too much about that situation. And it doesn't really have much to do with me. I'm being brought in as a new person to fulfill that job description. So I'm like, let's go. You know, once I was in, I was in. And I was like, let's go. And I'm gonna do everything in my power to write, co-write, and be a part of the songs and sing it to the best of my ability and do as much press as possible and go out there on tour. And like I always kind of joke that I looked at those old tunes like I Am the Law and Indians and Madhouse and Got the Time and Any Soul Show as like my adopted children. So I took very good care of those songs. And even though Joey and I's voices are very distinctively different, I really tried to sing them as closely to the original versions as possible because I know how it is when there's a change of singers. And sometimes singers will take that liberty and kind of change the way the song is. And I don't know, I didn't like it, so I didn't want to do that. I wanted to sing the songs the best I could with obviously the different sounds in our voice. But yeah, I'm sure it was a really tough time for Joey. And I mean, Joey is always going to be associated with Anthrax and the singing of Anthrax because his voice is very unique. And he was there in the 80s, and the 80s is when that band blew up. So, and nobody, even the 90s, no matter Sound of Wino is as great of a record it is, it's different than it was in the 80s. And the 80s was, when Anthrax really made their mark. So, he's always going to be there and be part of that. And he's back in the band, and that's where he should be.
Remember that, like, do you like the conversations of you becoming part of Anthrax and the first song that you played with them? Like, were you a fan of Anthrax before you joined them?
Yeah, I mean, I was certainly, knew all the material and stuff. I saw them at the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium here on the On the Living tour. It was a killer show. I was like right in the front row watching, and obviously I knew the tunes. In My World was like one of my favorites, and that was the song I think what I was like, let's play that song in the first kind of jam session because that was one of my favorites. Um, and of course, they were somebody like I had to look up to because they had done so well and they had their own unique style and they had the whole New York thing that was just very different from a lot of the other bands that were like the Bay Area thrash bands and stuff, and they had their New York thing, and it was it came with full throttle attitude, which was cool. So you know I admired them greatly.
Well, Armored Saint was doing different things than the big four and the big speed metal and thrash metal movement. What were your feelings? And you guys were big. You were good. Well, there was a time when, you know what I mean, you were a big priority on Chrysalis,
Yeah.
and like you were much bigger. Hence the not the rumors that you wanted to be part of Metallica or like that all the Metallica stuff. But wow, it was Armored Saint was a really big deal back then.
Yeah, I mean, Armored Saint, when we signed to Chrysalis and put out March of the Saint and Can You Deliver was played all over and probably Much Music as well as MTV, and it was a big video. And we definitely had a lot of steam and we were rolling there. And, you know, I, I think that Armored Saint's another band that we probably made a lot of mistakes. I mean, granted, we were like 21 years old and we went on our first tour opening for Quiet Riot and Whitesnake. And, here we are, like our first tour, we're playing arenas opening and going, man, like, wow, this is awesome. So um, I think that we just were young, and so we didn't really know a lot about business. And we were with Q Prime, which was the biggest, and still is one of the biggest management companies in the world. But I don't know. I think sometimes they weren't quite sure what to do with us. As a matter of fact, Armored Saint signed to Q Prime before Metallica, which is funny. So, they had Def Leppard and I don't know who they had. I mean, they got eventually that Tesla, but that again, that was after Saint and Queensryche. Maybe I felt like we were even before Queensryche. I don't know, but we were there, and I think that sometimes I feel like those guys didn't give us the best direction in what we were doing. And granted, we were pretty headstrong guys, and we were probably not the easiest guys to work with because we thought, hey, we know what we're doing, and this is our band, and we kind of DIY'd it ourselves. So, it's our thing. And, maybe we didn't quite listen to all the advice that we were given. And one of the things also I think that for saying is that we were not really part of the two trends that were happening. There was the thrash movement, and then there was, of course, the hair metal movement. And even though we were from LA, we sounded heavier than bands like Rat and Gray White and Steeler and Black and Blue. And I love all those bands, and they're great bands, and we played with those bands, and we had great shows with them. And to this day, I still think highly of all those bands that came out of LA. I mean, we just did 2 tours with Wasp, and it was great. And of course, there's the thrash bands, Death Angel and Exodus and Testament, and of course Metallica, Megadeth, and Slayer, Anthrax. But we were heavy and we were powerful, but we weren't quite that. We didn't quite have that sound. So we were really this band kind of a little bit sometimes insecure about. I say insecure because we just weren't quite sure about what we were doing. It wasn't until like Symbol of Salvation, which was years later, which we finally just said, and that was after we were dropped from Chrysalis, where we said, you know what, man, we we're just gonna write what comes out of us, and we're not gonna think about how it fits in and where it fits in. And the funny thing is, that was the beginning of the '90s, so we certainly didn't fit in with that. But I think that was the record that finally came together for us and then had the sound that sounded like Armored Saint. It was just a really confident band. So, what are you going to do? I mean, sometimes I look back and go, it wasn't our time, and we just weren't meant to really happen at that point. But I do believe that we were a great band, and to this day, I think we've become a much greater band. So, it just wasn't our timing was just always off.
When MTV and Much Music started to play these, well, just the whole world changed when these videos, and there was blocks, especially on Much Music, where I get my hour of heavy metal. But
Yeah.
anybody that actually had a budget and filmed a video, it was like for a kid like me to see like the early Venom and Motorhead and stuff like Can You Deliver? And I'm actually really I never ask money things, but I think this is a really funny money thing. What were the costs of the Can You Deliver video? Like
I
what
think Can You
was
Deliver it was like 40 grand. It was a lot.
yeah.
And which is funny because like our last record, we made the video End of the Attention Span, which is amazing video. And I think we did for like 6 grand or something like that. So like luckily now you can make make videos for much cheaper. And the same goes for records. I mean, I feel like on March of the Saint, we probably spent somewhere in the neighborhood of about 350 grand making that album. And granted, people were spending a lot of money on records. And, that was the style at that time, with Def Leppard and AC/DC and all these records that were being made for a lot of money, big studios, big drum sounds, all that stuff. But we were a brand new band, and going out there and spending that much money on our first record, I mean, that was just a huge mistake. It was something that we didn't need to do. And it really kind of took away a little bit of our rawness because I love March of the Saint, don't get me wrong. It's a great record and it has some great songs, but it is a little bit cleaner than what we were live. We were always kind of I always say it, we're like a glorified garage band because that's where we started in the garage. And we were just like this raw, kind of stripped down band. And so for us to put that as our first record, full length album, it just wasn't the best representation of who we were, especially live. It was just too clean. But, we were following in the footsteps of all the other bands. So making these very expensive records, making these expensive videos. Can You Deliver videos? Great. It's awesome. But it was expensive. Probably didn't need to spend that kind of money on either one of those things. But, you live and learn. That's one of the mistakes we made. And one of the things you go, damn, now we're in the hole like $500,000. How are we going to climb out of this? And we actually never did. We never climbed out of it. It wasn't until a few years ago where that when you get to that 35-year span where you can actually get your all your uh royalties back, and not your royalties back, but you can get all your um I don't know what the right term for it is, but you're now able to do these things where it doesn't cost the same amount of money that it used to cost, and you're not yeah, you're not really caught up in all that. And that's a good thing for a band like us. Our records don't need to be that much money to be made. You know, it's just ridiculous.
Like, would you have been sent like accounting statements from Chrysalis saying, this is what you owe us?
Yes, when they sent them, they didn't actually even send them that often, it seems like. But yes, we knew we were in the hole, and we were like, we're never getting out of this. This is just crazy money. And I mean, the funny thing is, like, Delirious Nomad was like half that money to make, and then Raising Fear, I think, was even half of that money to make. So we started making them a lot less for a lot less money, but. We by that point we were just so far in debt, and then we also took some tour support money, and yeah, it's just it was a drag. You know, we knew that we're never going to get out of it. So regardless of how much we sold, and then of course it affected the label as to what they wanted to do with us because they're looking at their debt and going, well, we're not going to spend another 40 grand on a video for you, and they didn't. So. You know, we were just in the hole. We were, you know, very, very deep at that point. So, what are you going to do? You know, you live and learn, and we did, and you know, that's something you don't want to ever do again. That's for sure.
Well, let's shine a really bright spotlight on like the current state of bands like Armored Saint. A couple of years ago, I was there was the Monterey Metal Fest, and King and Merciful Fate were on the bill,
Yeah,
playing like actually the bill's really funny. Striper, Behemoth, Judas Priest, Pantera, and Merciful Fate. In
that
Monterey.
is funny. That is funny. Striper for sure.
It was the second Pantera show with that whole regroup. And it's
Right.
I'm watching this Exorcist movie like right in front of me with King. I'm like, man, like you used to like starve in clubs, and now bands from that era, because of all these different generations learning and finding out about Armored Saint and Candlemass, and I just think it's so wonderful to see you guys like this is really all the planets are aligning bigger and better than probably ever before for a lot of bands.
Yeah, I guess if you hang in there long enough, it comes around to you, even for the smaller bands like us. So, I mean, really, at this point, I'd say Armored Saint is probably bigger than ever, except for maybe the 1984, 85 time. We're actually probably the biggest we've ever been. Um, we went out and toured with Wasp a couple of times. We sold tons of merchandise, like we never sold that kind of merch before, and we're just like, wow, this is crazy. Like, so I think, like I said, I go back to that kind of nostalgia thing where people, you know, kids, you know, whether they were kind of informed by their parents or even sometimes their grandparents, because we've seen three generations of people come to shows before, which is really cool. Um, you know, you find out about groups, and you're always learning about bands before you and who were, you know, in the eras before you and the decades before. And I'm still, like I said, I'm still doing that myself. So, you know, as you hang around long enough, sometimes people finally catch up and catch on, and that's what's happened to us and a lot of bands. So, you know, I don't think we're ever going to get to a point where we're playing arenas or anything. That was not in the cards for us. But well, we all been in arenas, should I say? But and I don't think we're going to be like headlining arenas. But hey, I mean, you know, stranger things have happened, but I'm not counting on that. But at the same time, if we can go out and kind of justify touring and sell a lot of merch and like kind of make a slight living, a lot more than we used to make, then that's cool. So to me, that's all I ever really wanted to do. Anyways, I mean, yeah, of course, in the 80s, we all had aspirations that we were going to be Metallica, but only Metallica became Metallica. But the reality is that, you know, I wanted to say, I want to have a long career. I want to have this kind of long, uh, many, many records made, lots of touring, all this stuff. That's the thing that I yearn for is to say I did it for 40 years and 50 years. And, you know, we're doing it, which is crazy. So,
Well, just a couple more quickies for you. What are
sorry,
like?
I know we're getting some interference there. I apologize. I don't know if it's me,
Oh
but
no, you're no, you're clean and clear, just
oh,
like
okay, cool.
you. What are the biggest misconceptions about that whole Metallica and John Bush wanting to jump ship and turning down and like what that you hear?
I don't know. There's misconceptions. It's more of just some people think they're not too sure about what the time frame of it. And the reality it was really, when they really came to me, it was before Kill 'Em All was even made. So um, some people think it was later, and it wasn't. It was when Kill 'Em All was. But I think those guys were going to New York to record Kill 'Em All, and that was still with Dave Mustaine in the band. Um, and I think that maybe before that, they had proposed the idea of me being the singer. And then um, at that point, Armored Saint was when we were a club band starting to get our feet wet in the scene and becoming kind of known. So what I always tell people is like all the Saint guys and I, we grew up together. We'd known each other since we were like 10 years old, for the most part. I mean, Dave came a little later in high school, and certainly Jeff came later as well too. But I mean, me, Gonzo, Joey, and Phil, and we've known each other since we were literally 9 years old. And so at that point, we had already had a long friendship, if you will, because we were like 18 years old. And, we were doing well. So I was like, okay, this band Metallica, yeah, they're cool. I've seen them. They're great. But I was like, well, but I don't want to leave my band. Like I'm happy in my band. And, I just it didn't seem like something that was right for me because I was happy in my band. So, and we were doing well. So, and Metallica wasn't where it wasn't like I was asked to join at the Black Album or something. It was like they were a club band too. So, sure, they were a little ahead of us for sure because they had already sent out all the demos, No Life Till Leather demos. And so they kind of had this international thing going. But again, it wasn't like they weren't selling out clubs or anything. They were just kind of starting off too. So, for me, it was easy to say thank you, but no thanks because I'm happy here. And it was as simple as that. So, I think that. Maybe after Kill 'Em All, they were kind of still considering it, which I mean, that would have been a mistake. And as I say many, many times, is that imagine a world without James Hetfield as a frontman and a singer is like
Yeah.
heavy metal would not be the same. So it just was never meant to be. We needed James as the king of metal and as this awesome frontman and singer. So.
So were you ever asked to jam? Did you ever jam with
I
them?
never did jam, no. But the funny thing is, we did go out and tour with those guys after that. We did the infamous Metallica Wasp Armored Saint tour, which was after Ride the Lightning came out. So Ride the Lightning came out, then March of the Saint was out, the first Wasp record, and we did that tour. We played Toronto and played Montreal, had great shows, Quebec City, and Canadian shows in Vancouver. Among, of course, all the dates in the States, L'Amour's 3 nights, which is legendary shows. So it was a great tour. It was a killer tour, and we did really well. And all three bands got on really well, and especially us and Metallica. I mean, really formed a bond there, and we were on the same management at that time with Q Prime, so everything was great. I just wish Metallica would have taken us to Europe at that time, and we would have been able to tour Europe properly, but we never did, and that was one of the biggest mistakes that the band ever made.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
without a doubt.
And
So
like,
we didn't go to Europe till 1989. We did not set our feet on European soil till we played the Dynamo Festival in 1989 after Raising Fear was out. So we were really, way behind when all these other bands were doing so well in Europe. And it was sucked because we had so much press about us. I always say I was on the cover of Kerrang magazine um and we kept telling our label and telling Cube, I'm like, can we go to Europe, man? Like everybody's going to Europe, and we're in all these magazines. Well, why are we not going to Europe? And like we're tailor made for Britain, and like this is lame. We're pissed. Come on, man. And oh no, we're concentrating on the U.S. And it's like, yeah, but Testament's there, and Anthrax is there, and Rat's there, and Wasp is there, and Cinderella, and we're not. What's going on here? This is stupid. And it's just downright idiotic, and we were pissed, and I'm still pissed about that, as you can tell.
um, and that was when there was only a couple of festivals. You had Donington,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
now it's just this explode. You just put your hand on any country, and then how many festivals in Germany or
Yeah.
Switzerland or wherever you're talking
Yeah.
with,
Yeah,
right?
we just booked a bunch of them for this next summer, and we're playing on the Alcatraz Festival, and yeah, among many others, Brutal Assault. Yeah, so I mean, we love festivals, and we want to. I mean, for a band that's putting out a new record in April, like to not go and play these festivals would just be moronic. And that's we're going. We want to play a bunch of festivals and be part of it. So yeah, that was a real frustrating time for Armored Saint. It was a big, big mistake. And we finally did get to Dynamo and had a great show there. And it's documented on film. And I guess the people were very, very excited to see us because it had been so long, and so there was that kind of upside. But yeah, it was a real drag. I really think that if we had been going to Europe all those years, starting in since 1984, we would have been a much bigger band in Europe than we are. And granted, we do well there. Don't get me wrong. And but there's still a bunch of territories that we've never even played. Like we've never really done Scandinavia. Like we've played Sweden rock once, and other than that, we've never played Norway. We've never played Finland. I just did an interview yesterday with this guy Marco from Finland. We've never played there. Never played Denmark. We've really never done shows in Spain or France other than a couple festivals. Um, it's just we did a bunch of dates in like the old Eastern Bloc countries like Croatia and Hungary, and we finally got there like not too long ago, but it was just weird. Like there's so many places that we still haven't even played, which is just ridiculous.
So how excited are you? You've got these three just truly like just left field Anthrax things going on. The new record's done. You're rolling out 2026. It's got to be exciting. And don't, I'm not asking you all the festivals you're playing, but Europe, like, I guess, is a big priority to get there and cover as much ground as you can, supporting
Yeah.
the record. Yeah.
Yeah, we're doing a couple shows with Sabotage, which are going to be amazing. Because when we played Dynamo Festival the first time in 1989, it was Sabotage and Armored Saint, and it's really, really cool. So, I mean, and they're a great band, and there's a lot of history there. So, yeah, it was really excited. I wish we were doing more dates with them, quite frankly, but we're excited to do the ones that we're doing. And like I said, a bunch of festivals. I can mention there's a couple bands were from our era that we're supposed to do some more dates with. So it looks like that's going to happen. Yeah, we're excited about the Armored Saint record coming out. I think it's killer. It's just kind of builds on what we've been doing, but yeah, it's a little different. And songwriting, I think it's just top notch. I mean, we're really Joey is an incredible producer and just this awesome songwriter and kind of the way he arranges ideas from other guys and puts it together. And he actually did a lot of cool singing and background vocals. He sang his ass off and then he embellishes my voice to the utmost. So I think the music's really, really cool. It just sounds like a classic Saint record, but sounds like a modern record. It sounds like it came out in 26. So I'm real excited. And these shows, these John Bush shows are going to be really fun. And I'd like to do that more too, of course. I mean, I like to take that to Europe at some point. The timing has to be right. Tracy Vera from Metal Blade has basically said, you can't do this in Europe. We're concentrating on Sane. I was like, I know, I know. So, I mean, I'm laughing about it. But yeah, I'd like to do that one day in Europe and maybe South America. And Armored Saint has only ever done one show in Japan, ever, in Loud Park, for like 2016. So, Japan, when I was in Anthrax, we did Japan every album. So, like, it's ridiculous to only have not played there once. And there's just a lot of places to play. So maybe in 26, Armored Saint will get a chance to play at some of these territories around the world. Like we saw you in Brazil, and that was only like our second or third time playing there. And yeah, so there's a lot of places to play, and maybe I could do that with these four Anthrax the records that I sang with them, do some of those shows too. But again, I want to stay out of those guys' way. They have a record coming out too. So, I mean, I want to try to avoid that and not add any confusion or create any kind of awkwardness. So it's just all about timing. Tim, it's time. I want to try to have good timing for my life this time instead of some bad timing, which I've had kind of a lot.
Well, just real quick, I forgot to ask you this. It's kind of funny to have both John Bush and Neil Turbin on the road in the same year because Neil just played here like about a month and a half
Oh,
ago.
awesome. Yeah, I just saw Neil the other night at the DO
That
Cancer
relationship,
Fund.
did you pick up Fistful of Metal like I did as a new release?
I saw Anthrax at the Country Club with Raven, in I don't know what year it was. It was with Neil. It was with Neil and I I don't know if Danny Lilker was still in the band there or if it was Frankie actually. I think it was Frankie at that point, but it was a great show. It was at the Country Club, which is a legendary venue here in LA in the Valley. Played there many times. We played there with Metallica, we played there with Motorhead. It's great shows. I saw Metallica and Raven there. So seeing, Raven and Anthrax there was a great show. And yeah, Neil's a cool guy. We talk and shoot the breeze. And he was talking to me about a bunch of gear, and I was like, I don't care about gear. No, I just give me a mic. And but he was like, oh, you got to try this new stuff, this new gear. And I was like, okay, cool. What is it? And I wasn't tuning out or anything. I was just like, I'm just not much of a gearhead, but. Yeah, he's a really cool guy, and every time I see him, we have a good chat. So, and good for him, I mean, people love Fistful of Metal.
No, absolutely. John, I just wish you the best. You look great. The whole world is right there in the palm of your hands, man.
Dude, you're being way too kind. And I'm sorry I insulted you about saying New York. I'm like, wait a minute, what am I thinking? I'm just sometimes I want to do these interviews early because I need to get them done because sometimes I actually got to do like my day job for a little bit. But like I sometimes I'm like I gotta wake up here, and so I'm sorry if I kind of
No, no, no. I
forgot
just
what I was talking about here.
saw you was in Brazil. Like, how does a Canadian meet up with one of his favorite bands from in metal in Brazil? Like, it's just
I
bizarre.
know it is pretty funny. Well, I'm looking forward to doing, more shows in Canada. It was cool. Armored Saint finally played in Calgary. We finally played in Vancouver after not playing there for like 30 years. And, of course, playing in Toronto and Montreal is just always it's just one of the, greatest places for rock in North America. And Quebec City is always a great place to play too. So yeah, I'm really excited for Armored Saint to get up there, and I'd love for this, this do these Anthrax songs and Anthrax records somewhere in Montreal and Toronto. I mean, sure the shows would be good, very good.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely. Say hi to the guys for me. All the
will
best.
do, brother. Thanks for all the love and support, man. Really appreciate it.